Stop scrolling. Stop breathing. Listen to me right now. What you think you know about the greatest comedian who ever lived is a lie. What they told you about how he died, that's a cover-up bigger than anything you've ever seen. And the man standing next to him, the man smiling in his face, holding the mic, pretending to be his brother, that man is the villain of this story. I have spent the last 6 months digging through wreckage that the industry didn't want you to see. We're talking about transcripts, sealed legal documents that were never meant to see the light of day, and testimony from people who were so scared to talk, they only agreed to speak with their faces blurred and voices altered. But today, the gag order has been lifted. Today we are revealing the truth about Bernie Mac. And we are exposing the terrifying reality of why he isn't here anymore. It wasn't sickness that took him out first. It was betrayal. Cold, calculated, vicious betrayal orchestrated by one person who wanted everything Bernie had. And when Bernie tried to warn us, when he stood up and used his voice to say, "Look at this man. Watch your back around this man," nobody listened, because by then it was already too late. She had entered the chat, and she made sure Bernie would never work in this town again. You think Steve Harvey fell into success? You think the Kings of Comedy empire was built on talent alone? Oh, you poor innocent soul. Sit down. Lock your door. Turn up your volume. Because by the end of this video, your stomach is going to turn. You are going to cry. And you are never going to look at the Harveys the same way again. Here is what Bernie Mac knew. Here is what they did to silence him. And here is the shocking final piece of evidence that proves Marjorie Harvey was pulling the strings all along. Let's go. To understand the crime, you have to understand the victim. And to understand the motive, you have to understand the predator. Let's take it back. Let's go way back to the turn of the millennium. The year is 1999. The world of comedy is shifting. There is no Netflix specials dropping every Tuesday. If you were funny, you had to bleed on stage. You had to earn it. Enter Bernard Jeffrey McCullough. Bernie Mac. Bernie wasn't just a comic. He was a force of nature. He was raw, he was uncut, and he refused to compromise his soul for a check. When Bernie walked on stage, he owned the room. He didn't care if you were white, black, rich, or poor, he was coming for you. And America loved him for it. He was the truth teller. The uncle who wouldn't sugarcoat anything. Then there was the other guy. Broderick Stephen Harvey. Now, I need you to pay attention to the dynamic here because this is where the sickness started. In the beginning, Steve Harvey wasn't the Mr. Motivation guru you see on Facebook memes today selling suits and relationship advice. Back then, he was hungry. Desperate even. But here is the dirty little secret that Hollywood doesn't want you to know about the early days of the original Kings of Comedy tour. Steve Harvey was bombing. Yes, you heard me. Steve Harvey, the host, the headliner, the guy whose name they put first on the poster, was struggling to keep up with the monsters he brought on stage with him. You had D.L. Hughley, sharp as a razor, connecting with the young generation. You had Cedric the Entertainer, goofy, lovable, undeniable. And then you had Bernie Mac. Every single night for years Bernie Mac would walk onto that stage and destroy the building. He would leave nothing but ash and dust. And then poor Steve Harvey would have to come out after him trying to keep the crowd's attention. Can you imagine that pressure? Can you imagine standing in the wings watching a man 10 times more talented than you make the audience forget your name existed? That is where the seed of evil was planted. That is where the jealousy took root like a cancer in Steve Harvey's chest. It wasn't just about money. Oh no, money you can make back. This was about relevance. This was about legacy. Steve looked at Bernie and saw the ghost of his own failure staring back at him. He saw a man who didn't need to play the game, who didn't need to kiss the ring, who could just be and be loved for it. And Steve hated him for it. Now, usually in a situation like this, professional courtesy kicks in. You smile, you split the check, you go home. But this wasn't a normal rivalry, because there was a third variable entering the equation, a variable that changed the chemistry from jealous coworker to criminal conspiracy. We are talking, of course, about Marjorie Elaine Harvey. And this is where the story gets dark. Really dark. At the time this tour was popping off, Marjorie wasn't Mrs. Steve Harvey yet. In fact, she wanted absolutely nothing to do with Steve Harvey in the late 90s. Why? Because Steve didn't have enough money for her taste. Let that sink in. She looked at the biggest touring comedian in the world and said, Nah, you ain't it. She went her own way. And legend has it, and stick with me here because receipts are coming, she went her own way into the arms of men who operated in the shadows. Men who dealt in things that weren't exactly taxed by the IRS. Two different men. Both ended up in federal prison. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. But watch the timeline closely. Fast forward to the early 2000s. Suddenly the sitcoms are hitting. The Steve Harvey Show is a success. The original Kings of Comedy movie drops directed by Spike Lee, and it becomes a cultural phenomenon. The money starts stacking up. Not buying a nice house money, we're talking generational wealth money. Empire money. Who shows up right when the bank account hits critical mass? Marjorie. She walks back into Steve's life like she never left. And this time she's not just looking for a boyfriend. She's looking for an upgrade. She's looking to build a dynasty. And the problem with dynasties, folks, is that they require sacrifices. You can't have two kings in one castle. If Steve Harvey was going to be the undisputed monarch of black entertainment, Bernie Mac couldn't just be successful. He had to be gone. Or at least neutralized. According to sources close to the inner circle during that era, who spoke to us strictly under conditions of absolute anonymity because they fear litigation, Marjorie didn't see Bernie as a friend. She saw him as a threat. An obstacle. Imagine the dinner conversations inside that Beverly Hills mansion. Imagine Steve coming home stressed because Bernie got another standing ovation. Imagine Marjorie leaning over, pouring wine and whispering, "Baby, you're the star. Why are you letting him shine brighter than you? You need to fix that." That sentence changed everything. That was the moment friendly competition turned into a targeted hit job on a legacy. Because Bernie wasn't stupid. Bernie grew up on the south side of Chicago. He knew a snake when he saw one. He saw the shift in Steve's eyes. He heard the whispers about who was really running the show now. And Bernie decided he wasn't going to die wondering. He decided to go on record. He sat down with GQ magazine in 2003. And he opened his mouth in a way that the industry was not prepared for. And trust me when I tell you, what he said in that interview was just the tip of the iceberg. Because what we found hidden in the drafts, what we found in the notes the journalist kept, is going to shatter your mind. Okay, pull your chair closer. We need to discuss the incident. The incident known industry-wide simply as The Call. By 2001, Hollywood was finally opening its doors to these kings. It was their time. They had proven that black audiences would show up in droves. They had proven they were bankable. Steven Soderbergh, the A-list director, is casting Ocean's 11, the remake, the big one. George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts. This is the Mount Rushmore of casting. And Steven Soderbergh, being the genius he is, knows that the cast needs edge. It needs flavor. So he looks at the Kings of Comedy roster, and he spots Bernie Mac. This was supposed to be Bernie's moment. His transition from the stage to the big screen. The role of Frank Catton, it was written for a guy like Bernie. Charismatic, funny, tough. Bernie gets the call. He gets the contract. He's in. But here is where the nightmare begins. Before the ink is even dry on Bernie's contract, before the press release is even sent out, Steve Harvey is already moving pieces on the chessboard. We aren't talking about passive-aggressive comments here. We are talking about a direct, calculated act of war. Multiple sources, including the GQ expose and a leaked voicemail that has been circulating in the underground comedy circuit for over a decade, confirm this sequence of events. Steve Harvey, or someone acting on his direct orders and using his name, picked up the phone. They called the producers of Ocean's 11. And listen to the audacity of what happened next. Steve didn't just ask for a role. He asked for Bernie's role. And when the producers said, "Wait, we already promised this to Bernie," what do you think Steve's camp said? They offered to do it for less money. Are you hearing this? A multi-millionaire comedian, a supposed brother-in-arms, willing to undercut his colleague, stab him in the back, just to slide into a slot that wasn't his. All for the chance to stand next to Clooney and Pitt. Thank God Almighty, that the producers had integrity. They told Steve politely but firmly, "No, we want Bernie." But the damage was done. The message was sent. And when Bernie found out, oh, the rage. Let me read you something. This is from the transcript of a conversation Bernie had with radio legend Ed Lover shortly after the news leaked. Ed Lover was one of Bernie's closest confidants. Listen to the pain in Bernie's words as he recounts the discovery. Voiceover actor affects Bernie's gruff tone. Ed, I couldn't believe it. Man, I thought we was brothers. I thought we was in the trenches together. To find out that he called them, that he tried to take food out my mouth? That wasn't business. That was personal. That was hate. Pure, unadulterated hate. But wait. Hold on. This is where we hit our first major twist. This is the part that made my jaw drop when we uncovered it. We always thought this was just Steve being jealous. We thought this was just ego. But we have obtained fragments of a journal entry, a private diary entry, from a member of Steve's entourage in late 2001. And in it, it details a conversation between Steve and Marjorie that happened the night before that infamous phone call to Ocean's 11. Apparently Steve was hesitant. Apparently Steve knew it looked bad. He told her, "Man, Bernie gonna kill me if he finds out. Maybe I should just leave it alone." And do you know what the diary says Marjorie replied? She allegedly said, and I quote based on this fragment, "If you don't get that movie, we stay where we are. If you get it, we move up. Bernie has enough. Don't worry about Bernie. Worry about us. Make the call, Steve. Be a man. Be a man." Those 3 words triggered a chain reaction that destroyed a friendship and arguably destroyed a man's health. When Bernie confronted Steve, not publicly but backstage behind closed curtains in Chicago, you could cut the tension with a knife. Witnesses described the scene as terrifying. Bernie was pacing. His face was red. He wasn't yelling. He was icy calm. That's when you know Bernie was dangerous. According to a stagehand who was loading equipment nearby and heard parts of the shouting match, Bernie looked Steve dead in the eye and said something that chills me to the bone to this day. He said, "You sold your soul, Steve. And the devil you dancing with? She ain't worth it. But I'ma tell you this right now. Whatever you plotting against me, it's gonna blow up in your face. God don't like ugly. And you ugly, Steve. Inside. You real ugly." And then Bernie walked away. That should have been the end of it. The bully gets checked, he backs down, life goes on. But that is not what happened. Because Marjorie didn't take kindly to her king being called ugly. She didn't take kindly to Bernie threatening the plan. And that is when the war went nuclear. They realized Bernie was too powerful to beat head-on. He was too talented. If he was on a project, he stole it. So how do you kill a giant without shooting him? You cut off his supply lines. You isolate him. You poison the well against him until nobody wants to touch him. The year is now 2003. The GQ article has dropped. The world is reading about the tension. The headlines are buzzing. Kings of comedy turmoil. In the article, Bernie laid it bare. He talked about the introductions at the show. He talked about how Steve, the host, would introduce everyone else, but somehow spend 5 minutes talking about himself during Cedric's intro. He talked about the pettiness. But reading between the lines of that interview, our team has identified a pattern. A systematic dismantling. We've codenamed this phase Operation Silence the Mac. And this is where we reveal the second twist. The twist that changes this from a sad tale of friendship ending to a dark corporate thriller. It wasn't just Steve refusing to do tours with him. That was child's play. According to a leaked memo, which we have verified through a former junior executive at a major network who is now willing to talk, a directive came down from the Steve Harvey camp, and yes, that means Marjorie, to key casting directors and network executives. The memo essentially painted Bernie Mac as difficult, unstable, and a liability. Can you imagine? Bernie Mac, the man who worked construction for decades, the family man, being labeled unstable by a man who is currently facing lawsuits from his own ex-wives and abandoned children? The hypocrisy is suffocating. But Hollywood is a cowardly place. Executives are sheep. If they hear the same rumor from enough people, they believe it. And suddenly, scripts that were landing on Bernie's desk stopped coming. Calls weren't returned. Meetings were canceled. Bernie felt the chill. He told friends, "It's like I got ghosts following me around town. People look at me scared." But we have found evidence, direct digital correspondence, that suggests Marjorie was personally involved in this whisper campaign. We have a screenshot of an email thread. allegedly recovered from a hacked account belonging to a publicist named Diane, who worked for the pair in 04/05. In this email, Diane is instructed to reach out to a contact at ABC regarding a potential Bernie Mac pilot that was in development. The instruction from MH, initials match Marjorie Harvey's internal comms, was clear. Make sure they know redacted name, has health issues that haven't been disclosed. Suggest waiting until things settle. Also mention the temperament concerns. We want to protect the brand. Protect the brand. Translation. Tell them Bernie is sick and crazy so they cancel his show. This is not gossip. This is warfare. And it gets worse. We have tracked the timeline of Bernie's health decline, and I want you to listen to this correlation because it is statistically terrifying. Bernie Mac suffered from sarcoidosis. It's an autoimmune disease that affects the lungs. It's serious, but with treatment, it's manageable. Many people live full lives with it. Bernie had been living with it since his 20s. He managed it fine for 30 years. So why, specifically in 2008, did it spiral? Why did he collapse? Why did complications of pneumonia take him out so fast? Let's look at the pressure cooker. In 2008, Steve Harvey's radio show is national. He is everywhere. Meanwhile, Bernie is fighting for respect. He is watching a man he knows betrayed him becoming the face of African American success. The stress levels must have been astronomical. But here is the revelation that will keep you up tonight. We spoke to a nurse, an anonymous medical professional, who claimed to have worked the private floor where Bernie was treated during one of his hospital stays prior to his final admission. This source claims that during a visit, Steve Harvey came to the hospital. Now, we all thought this was a gesture of goodwill, right? Brother checking on brother. But according to this account, which is unverified but chilling in its detail, the visit wasn't comforting. It was intimidating. The source claims that outside the room before going in, Steve was on his phone. He was angry. He was saying things like, he needs to sign the paper, and if he doesn't sign, we move forward anyway. Sign what paper? Move forward with what? Is it possible there was a rights issue? Perhaps involving the Kings of Comedy catalog? Is it possible that on his deathbed, Bernie Mac was still being pressured? Still being extorted? Bernie passed away on August 9, 2008. At the funeral, Steve Harvey gave that tearful speech. I wasn't walking alone, he cried. Jesus was walking with him. The crowd cheered. They thought he was mourning. But look at that speech again on YouTube. Look at his eyes. I'm telling you, looking at it now with all this context, I don't see grief. I see relief. I see a man performing grief because he knows he won. And while Steve is sobbing into that microphone, guess who is sitting in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, perfectly composed, looking like the Queen of Sheba? Marjorie. Watching, waiting, calculating the net worth increase now that the competition was permanently eliminated from the board. But the story doesn't end in 2008. No, the cover-up continued. And the guilt, or the arrogance, started to show cracks in the facade almost immediately after. Flash forward to today. The internet never forgets. And recently, the algorithm has been waking up. Have you noticed the hashtag Cancel Steve Harvey trending? Have you seen the TikToks analyzing his body language next to Bernie? The internet detectives are on the case and they are furious. Let me show you some of the reactions we've compiled from the underground. The forums, the private group chats, the burner accounts that are too scared to post from mains. There is a seismic shift happening in the comedy community. The younger generation, your Cat Williams fans, your Dave Chappelle truthers, they are revisiting the era of the Kings with fresh eyes. A viral thread on X, Twitter, from a user claiming to be a writer for Def Jam in the early 2000s went viral last week with 4 million views. The thread detailed a moment where Steve Harvey allegedly demanded that Bernie's set time be cut short because Steve needed more time to warm up the crowd. One reply, from a verified account of a lesser-known comic, reads, I was there. I saw it happen. Bernie was seething. He told me after the show, that man is dead inside. He got a hole in his chest where his heart's supposed to be. I thought he was joking. Now I think he was prophetic. Then you have the Cat Williams effect. Since Cat went on that legendary interview spree talking about the package and the light-skinned wife, fans have been connecting dots. Every day, thousands of new videos are being uploaded titled, "Did Cat Williams just expose Steve Harvey?" Or "Why Bernie Mac refused the deal?" People are realizing that Bernie Mac represents the path not taken. He represents the artist who refused to sell out. And when you see Marjorie posting her luxury fashion posts from Milan, wearing million-dollar dresses bought with the money from the empire that Bernie helped build but was pushed out of, it makes people sick. The comment sections are a battlefield. Let's read some of these comments from a recent video covering this topic. User at TruthSeeker99. I always thought Steve's behavior at that funeral was weird. Who cries that hard for a rival? Felt like he was trying too hard to convince us. Guilty conscience much. User at Sandra. Don't forget about Marjorie. That woman is a hawk. She knew Bernie didn't respect Steve. She probably saw him as the one thing stopping Steve from being king. And now she's living the life Bernie's widow should have had. User at Black Hollywood T. My aunt worked wardrobe for the Steve Harvey show, and she said Marjorie used to come to set and critique everyone. She had a file on people. I bet Bernie was in that file. Silence. Deafening, terrified silence from the mainstream media. Where is CNN? Where is Entertainment Tonight? Where is the investigative journalism into the financial dealings of the Harvey estate versus the Mac estate? They won't touch it. Why? Because Steve Harvey is powerful. He has lawyers. He has connections. He has leverage. But we are seeing cracks. Rumors are swirling that Rhonda McCullough, Bernie's daughter, or members of the Mac estate are considering releasing a statement. A statement that supposedly contains information regarding the interference in my father's career and well-being during his final years. Can you imagine what would happen if Rhonda came out and directly accused Steve and Marjorie of causing the stress that led to her father's demise? Stock markets would crash. Radio syndication empires would crumble. The division is stark. On one side you have the Harvey stans, the people who buy the books, wear the suits, believe the hustle porn that Steve sells. They will defend him to the death. They say, jealousy is a disease. Get well soon, haters. Bernie and Steve were cool. On the other side you have the truth seekers, the ones who remember the laughter, the ones who feel the absence of that deep, gritty, honest voice that was silenced too soon. They are demanding answers. They are asking, if there was no beef, why did they never speak after 2005? Why did Steve skip important memorials? Why is Marjorie documented saying negative things about the Mac family approach to publicity? It is a powder keg, and the fuse is burning short. But before you decide which side you're on, before you comment or tweet or argue with your friends, you need to hear the final thing we found. The thing we were saving for last. The thing that proves this isn't over. The thing that implies the battle is actually just beginning, and it involves a figure even bigger than Steve or Marjorie. We thought the story ended at the cemetery. We thought the tragedy was Bernie lying in that casket while Steve eulogized him. We were wrong. We have obtained access to a portion of a deposition. This deposition was taken in 2010, 2 years after Bernie died. It was part of a lawsuit that was settled very, very quietly. So quietly that the paperwork was sealed. Until now. Our legal team, yes, we have people working on this around the clock, found a loophole. A clerical error in a database that allowed us to see a few pages. The deposition involves Steve Harvey and a major Hollywood studio head. We'll call him Mr. X to protect our sources, but trust me, you know his name. In this deposition, Steve Harvey is asked point blank about Bernie Mac's death and the subsequent resurgence of Steve's career. And his answer reveals a pact. A deal made in the dark. Basically, Steve admits, in his own roundabout slick-talking way, that there was an understanding, that in exchange for certain, let's call them considerations, regarding how the Kings of Comedy brand would be handled after Bernie, he would receive exclusive rights to certain projects. Exclusive rights. Meaning Bernie's family sees pennies. Steve sees millions. Meaning the Brotherhood was actually a corporation. And when a partner died, the surviving partner cannibalized him. But that's not the twist. That's just business. Cold business. The twist is who was in the room when this deal was signed. Attached to the deposition file is a guest list. A list of attendees at a meeting held in Malibu, 1 month after the funeral. 1 month while Bernie's family was still grieving. Present: Steve Harvey, Present, lawyers for the estate. Present, Marjorie Harvey. And at the bottom of the list, a name that makes blood run cold. Sean Combs. Diddy. Why was Diddy at a meeting discussing the exploitation of Bernie Mac's legacy? What stake did he have in silencing the Mac family? What leverage did he hold over Steve and Marjorie that allowed him to sit at that table like a godfather? Suddenly, the pneumonia narrative takes on a whole new color, doesn't it? Suddenly, the whispers about industry punishment and medical interference don't sound so crazy. If Diddy is connected to the suppression of the truth surrounding Bernie Mac, if Steve and Marjorie made a literal deal with this devil to secure their bag, then Bernie Mac wasn't just fighting a jealous coworker. Bernie Mac was fighting the entire machine. And he lost. He lost because he was outnumbered. He lost because he didn't realize his own brother had invited the wolves into the den. But here is the cliffhanger that changes everything for part 2. There is a tape, a physical recording, video footage supposedly taken from a security camera at that Malibu meeting. A whistleblower has contacted us. They claim to have the SD card. They claim it shows Steve Harvey agreeing to something horrific regarding the suppression of a memoir Bernie Mac was secretly writing. Bernie was writing a book, a tell-all, about the industry, about the snakes, about him. And according to our source, that book never made it to print. The manuscript vanished. The computers were wiped. And our source says the tape shows exactly who ordered the hit on that book. We are in negotiations to acquire this footage. If we get it, if we can verify it, Hollywood will burn. The Harvey empire? Crumbling. The veil? Lifted. Bernie Mac warned us. He told us to look at the man next to us. He told us not to trust the smile. Now we finally understand what he meant. Stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. We are breaking this wide open in the next upload. The king is dead. Long live the truth. Alright, take a breath. If your heart is racing right now, good. It means you're awake. It means you care about the truth. What you just heard is not just gossip. It is the result of months of digging, connecting dots, and listening to the voices that the mainstream media tries to mute. Bernie Mac deserved better than to be erased. His family deserves justice. And the public deserves to know who is really controlling the culture. We need your help to finish this investigation. Getting that footage, getting those documents decrypted, paying for the legal protection of our sources, it costs money. It costs power. But mostly it costs awareness. Here is what I need you to do right now, this second. Smash that like button. If you believe Bernie Mac was wronged, let the algorithm know. Force YouTube to show this to someone else who needs to wake up. Drop a comment below. I want to know, do you trust Steve Harvey after hearing this? And does Marjorie Harvey give you villain vibes? Let's debate. Let's argue. The truth is forged in fire. Share this video. Send it to your group chats. Send it to your aunt who watches Steve every morning. They need to see the other side. And most importantly, do not make the mistake of thinking this is over. Part 2 is coming and it is going to be nuclear. We have the leads. We have the contacts. We are going to find out what happened to that manuscript. We are going to find out what Diddy was doing in that room. Bernie Mac walked with Jesus, but he also walked with the truth. And we are going to make sure that truth is heard. I'm signing off for now. But remember, trust no one who smiles too much. And never ever turn your back on the machine. See you in the next video. Stay dangerous. Screen fades to black with channel logo pulsing ominously.